This philosophical razor advocates that when presented with competing hypotheses, one should prefer the one that requires the fewest assumptions. The principle gives precedence to simplicity, also expressed as entities are not to be multiplied beyond necessity. This is how Wikipedia and Britannica respectively define the philosophical principle of Occam's razor. And I quite like this way of thinking, that we should prefer an answer that requires less speculation and that it mainly focuses on what is fact. Now, when I think about the most used description, that the simplest explanation is usually the best one, it feels wrong, as if it is imperative and not a way to compare theories. Plus, simplicity can be subjective and change depending on your point of view. But you might be thinking, why is this guy talking about some philosophy mumbo jumbo? And to be fair, you're right. So let me read you something else, something more pertinent to this video. The truth is that I've done one actual retcon in the series, although I'm not going to say where it was. So while it's true that the story has developed new details over time, that may not have been planned from the beginning, that doesn't mean that the pieces don't fit together as a whole. To be clear, the one retcon mentioned was integrated pretty seamlessly, and most people didn't notice. If you're not aware, what I just quoted is from a Reddit post made by Scott, regarding the only retcon he had made at the time. This has been occupying some space in my head recently, mainly because of the fact that its introduction was able to fit with what we knew, or what we thought we knew, of the story at the time, and that whatever changed wasn't noticed, which could mean that the changed detail is of such a small scope that we didn't register it. So I wanted to present to you my perspective on this matter, and try to figure out what this retcon might be. First, I think that the most important thing to do is to pinpoint which game needed to be retconned. Considering that Scott made a post in September of 2017, we know that the target of the retcon was one of the first 4 games, since by then, the latest game was Sister Location, and you can't really insert a retcon of Sister Location's story in itself. Taking that into account, I believe that the retcon was made to change something about Five Nights at Freddy's 1 or 4. It could be FNAF 4 because Sister Location was so different in tone, setting, and scope, or it could be FNAF 1 since it was the first game, and it's hard to believe that Scott had any major plans with this series while he developed the first game. Today, I wanted to look at FNAF 1 and try to figure out what detail was changed, since I think there's a higher likelihood that something had to be changed about one's original story. However, if you think that 4 was the game that got retconned, I recommend Sambar's How One Retcon Changed FNAF Forever video, and will leave a link in the description since I found his theory very interesting. When I started my research for this video, I found it weird that, when looking back, the first game didn't seem to have a clear conclusion, and the ones that were taken appeared to be based on a lot of speculation and assumptions. Let me explain why I find this weird. Because of 2 major facts. One, that FNAF would have been Scott's last game had it not succeeded, and 2, that at the time, Scott had already developed over 50 games, and his overall skills, including his writing skills, must have improved as a result, independent of the game's success. So, I find it strange that a man with so much experience would spend 6 months to deliver his supposedly final game, and have it seemingly lead to nowhere had the series ended there. Hence, I want to analyze FNAF 1 without thinking about the following games, only its facts. Having that approach in mind, let's first examine the facts that the game gives us. And don't worry, I won't be playing the phone calls nor will I be reading the newspapers. However, I will be showing the parts that support my ideas. Starting with night 1, during the phone call we receive, we immediately learn that these are recorded messages, and that phone guy is finishing his last week at the same time he is recording, which informs us of the difference in time frame between us and him. Near the end of this message, we also learn that the animatronics are only allowed to walk during the night because of an incident named the Bite of 87. Stepping into Night 2's recording, Phone Guy mentions that the animatronics become more active as the week progresses, and the fact that he can talk for long makes me believe that he himself is further into the week. It's also in this message that we learn that Freddy himself doesn't move much if there's light. Night 3 and 5 sadly don't give us any very useful information. Night 4, however, is where there's something interesting. Soon after the message begins, we start to hear something bang on a door, which would most likely be Foxy, since in-game he is the only one to do that. And not long after this, we hear Freddy's music box and the banging at the same time, something that would not happen in game because Freddy only plays his music box when power goes out, and when that happens, the doors would open and the banging would stop. However, what I find most interesting is that it seems the one who kills Phone Guy is Golden Freddy, given the scream that can be heard at the end of the message. Switching our focus to the newspaper clippings, these are where the most relevant part of the story is, and through them we learn that a man was identified, captured, and charged with the disappearance of 5 kids, that this man was suspected of dressing as a company mascot, the bodies of the children were never found, the restaurant started to lose popularity because of this incident, that it has been threatened with shutdown multiple times, the animatronics themselves don't smell so very good, and have been reported to have blood and mucus on them, and that the restaurant eventually closed down. From these newspapers, we can take some conclusions. First and foremost, given the wording, we cannot be sure if the suspect dressed in a mascot suit belonging to the company, or if he just dressed like one. But I believe we can be certain that this suspect was not affiliated with the restaurant. As a news company, it would be a big lapse in judgment to decide on the exclusion of that information, especially if the culprit was an owner. Second, we can assume that the missing kids are inside the mascots, which is told to us very plainly. I don't think you can even call bodies themselves were never found and blood and mucus around the eyes and mouths of the mascots subtext. It's pretty clear to see Scott's intentions. But once again, what piques my interest is the information we are not given. That being, we do not know our time relative to these clippings, nor the time frame of these events. Did the culprit lure all the 5 kids in the span of a few days, or did he take longer between kidnappings? Most likely he did all of that in a short period of time, since taking longer would draw more attention to it, but we can't be certain. I would also like to highlight that one of the newspapers says that 5 children are now linked to the incident, and I interpret it as that at the minimum, 5 different cases of missing children have been connected to this one incident, which could mean that more missing children could also be connected. Now, it would be careless of me to skip the last and biggest piece of information, that being the fact that every so often the player character, Mike Schmidt, experiences visions of the words "It's me," most often accompanied by images of Freddy, Bonnie, but mainly Golden Freddy. At times, this phrase can also appear on its own, when switching camera feeds, written on the walls of the right hall, and written on Pirate Cove's wood sign. And this phrase is where this video's idea lies upon, since I've always found it weird how when FNAF 1 came out, there didn't seem to be a satisfying answer. Yes, this phrase could be spoken by one of the children, but that idea doesn't seem to hold firm, because the phrase itself implies a level of mutual familiarity between the speaker and us, both the player and Mike. And for this reason, having it be one of the children seems unsatisfactory. Yes, Mike might know them, but we as the player don't. I would be more inclined to believe that the speaker was one of the missing children if the phrase was more in the vein of "I'm here" or "help me." Phrases that would, without making too many assumptions, make us believe that one, if not all of the children are trying to communicate with us. Some of you might have already understood where I'm trying to go with this, but let me build some theory support. It is fair to say that the phrase is tightly connected to Golden Freddy, given the fact that all of the visions are heavily implied to be of supernatural origin, and it's difficult to assess if these visions are tied to the character's perspective or if it's the physical location that is changing. However, this is more relevant to Pirate Cove's sign and the Right Hall, but it does not retract that they are intertwined with a more spiritual event, and Golden Freddy himself has a very ghostly presence. Although this still does not identify our speaker. Yes, it is linked to Golden Freddy, but who is also linked to him? Well, most likely Phone Guy. He is the only character that we sort of meet, and when you look at the way Golden Freddy's suit is shown to us, there seems to be an adult-sized body inside, slumped to the side. Even the white dots we see could be the light reflecting from his eyes. And Phone Guy did tell us that the only thing that would ever see the light of day would be our eyes and teeth whenever they popped out. The biggest problem I see with this idea is that, if you remember, during Night 4's call, it sounds like Golden Freddy's scream when Phone Guy dies, and that raises the question of how can Golden Freddy kill the person that supposedly possesses it? Well, I feel like it's not Phone Guy who entirely possesses the suit, but the child in it, and that Phone Guy is only in the back seat, and that when we see Golden Freddy and in turn he sees us, only then is Phone Guy's spirit able to call out, "It's me, the guy who gave you guidance. I'm here, please help." This could be Scott's initial intent, and I could end here, but honestly, I wish that I'm wrong, and that we never find out what the retcon was. As I wrote and pondered on this possibility, the stronger I felt uneasy, and thought to myself, what would knowing the retcon entail? Because I felt that if the retcon was made to drastically change the direction that Scott first had in mind, it would mean that he either did so to develop a better story or to find more success. And if it is ever revealed that it's the latter possibility, I fear for the fandom's response, as we could see it as Scott selling out. Even so, could we ever blame the man? Someone that was most likely desperate to support his family and trying to do what he loved, finally finds a way to realize both. Yes, he could have made the following games without changing his initial direction, but would it have stuck so much? I think it's no exaggeration to say that most of the community latched themselves to these games because of the mystery, and that having a less captivating story would have lost all of those who love to deep dive for hidden details. Regardless of outcome, I believe we should all be happy and proud that a man that struggled so much was able to realize his passion. Good job, Scott. Hey, if you made it this far, first of all, hope you enjoyed it and thank you. I started to work on this video at the beginning of the year because of a pretty silly train of thought. It might sound strange, but I got the idea for this theory from a fan-made song by Mando Pony, especially from two verses from their song Just Gold, which is supposedly sung by Golden Freddy. These two verses being, "There was a time, not so long ago at all, I was just like you, can you hear my call?" And I know it is a bit dumb to take this song and try to fit a theory around an idea it throws, but I do believe that a change of perspective is an extremely good thing, and that when we ask weird questions, we end up figuring out details we could not see before. It was with this perspective that I decided to look at FNAF 1 today, looking for evidence that Phone Guy could have been planned to be in Golden Freddy, and the source of its meme. Honestly, I never thought I would do something like this. I'm not someone who enjoys hunting for secrets and lore. Either way, this was a half for the sake of doing it and half for interest and curiosity type of project. Who knows, maybe I'll have an urge to talk about something else in the future.